The warning lights flashed red across every screen in the Galactic Council chamber. Ambassador Velthar's wings trembled as he read the distress signal again. The Velnar colony was dying. 3 settlements gone, he said, his voice barely a whisper. 40,000 civilians dead or missing. The other council members sat in heavy silence. The Rachnath swarm had struck without warning, as they always did. The insect-like creatures moved through space like a plague, consuming everything in their path. "We must send help," said Councillor Mirash, her blue skin rippling with concern. She was from the water world of Maratha, and her people knew what it meant to lose their home. "Our nearest fleet is 3 weeks away," replied General Koth, the crystalline Vexir military commander. His body chimed softly as he moved, a sound that usually brought comfort but now seemed hollow. "The Velnar don't have 3 weeks. They have days, maybe hours." The chamber fell silent again. Everyone knew the truth. The Velnar would fall before help could arrive. Another civilization would be added to the Rachnath's list of victims. It was a terrible reality, but it was reality nonetheless. Then a new voice crackled over the communication system. "Council, this is Captain Hyun of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We've intercepted the Velnar distress call. We can be there in 3 days. Permission to render assistance?" The council members looked at each other with confusion. Earth, the newest member species? They had only joined the council 6 months ago. Most species still didn't know much about them except that they came from a strange, remote world. "Captain Hyun," Ambassador Velthar said carefully, "we appreciate your offer, but the Rachnath swarm is extremely dangerous. They have destroyed species with far more military experience than humanity possesses." "Understood, Ambassador," Hyun replied calmly. "We're still the closest ship. We can help." General Koth pulled up Earth's file on his display. His crystalline eyes widened as he read the environmental data. "Captain, according to our records, your homeworld is classified as a Class 12 death world. Your people have no significant military victories on record. The Rachnath will overwhelm any force you can field." There was a pause on the other end. When Hyun spoke again, there was something in her voice the council members couldn't quite identify. It wasn't anger or pride. It was something quieter, something certain. "With respect, General, you're reading old data. We'll handle it. Horizon's Edge out." The connection ended. The council members sat in stunned silence. Did she just hang up on us? Mirage asked. "She did," Velthar said. He made a decision. "Let them go. We have nothing to lose. If they fail, we've lost nothing we weren't already losing. If they succeed," he didn't finish the sentence. Success seemed impossible. Aboard the Horizon's Edge, Captain Hyun turned to her crew. The ship was small by council standards, originally designed as a diplomatic vessel. But Hyun had requested certain modifications when humanity joined the council. Now those modifications would be tested. "Taeyang, assemble your team," she ordered. Commander Taeyang stood from his station. He was a tall man with scars on his hands from years of combat training. Before joining the diplomatic corps, he had served in Earth Special Forces. "Already done, Captain. 200 Marines fully equipped." 200? Lieutenant Daewin looked up from the weapons console. "Against 50,000 Rachnath? The council thinks it's a suicide mission," Taeyang said calmly. "They might be right. Anyone who wants to sit this one out can do so. No judgment, nobody moved." Daewin smiled slightly. "Well, when you put it that way, sir." Dr. Nari entered the bridge carrying a datapad. She was shorter than the others, with quick eyes that missed nothing. As the ship's doctor and xenobiologist, she had been studying everything the council had on the Rachnath. "I've analyzed their biology," she said, projecting images onto the main screen. "They're impressive. Armored exoskeleton, acid blood, coordinated swarm intelligence. But look at this." She highlighted a section of data. They evolved on a low-gravity world with thin atmosphere. Temperature range -10 to +15 degrees Celsius. Anything outside that and their efficiency drops. "Earth normal is 22 degrees, Pilot Minho said from his station. "Will that be enough to slow them down?" "Maybe," Nari said. "But there's something else. Their swarm coordination relies on pheromone signals. In higher pressure and humidity, those signals degrade. They'll still be dangerous but less organized." Sergeant Bora, the Marine squad leader, leaned forward. "So if we fight them in Earth-like conditions, we have an advantage?"
"Theoretically," Nari said.
"Of course, those same conditions would kill the Velnar we're trying to save." "Then we keep the Velnar behind our lines," Taiyang said. We fight forward in modified zones. Captain Hyun studied her crew. They were volunteers, all of them. Earth didn't draft soldiers for council service. These men and women had chosen to be here, chosen to help species they had never met before. 3 days to Velnar Prime, she said. Use that time well. Study everything we have on Raknath tactics. Train in the simulation pods. Get rest when you can. She paused. The council thinks we can't win this. Let's prove them wrong. The crew dispersed to their tasks. Hyun remained on the bridge, watching the stars streak past as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. She had not told the council everything. She had not mentioned that humans had been fighting wars on a hostile planet for their entire existence. She had not explained that every human alive was descended from survivors of ice ages, plagues, predators, and disasters that would have ended most species. The galaxy was about to learn something new about Earth. Over the next 3 days, the horizon's edge raced toward Velnar Prime. In the cargo bays, Marines checked their weapons and armor. In the medical bay, Nari prepared for casualties, sterilizing equipment and synthesizing medicines. On the bridge, Daiwan programmed firing solutions for weapons that most council species considered unnecessarily powerful. Pilot Minho ran simulation after simulation, practicing approaches in Velnar's atmosphere. The planet had lighter gravity than Earth and thinner air. It would be like flying in slow motion. He smiled at the thought. Easy. In the training deck, Taiyang sparred with his squad leaders. They moved through combat drills that Earth had developed over thousands of years of warfare. Strikes, blocks, tactics for when the enemy got too close for guns. The council species rarely trained for close combat. They didn't have to. They weren't built for it. Humans were different. As the ship approached Velnar Prime, sensors picked up the devastation. Smoke rose from 3 settlements. Raknath bioships orbited the planet like vultures. The swarm was preparing for its final assault on the Velnar capital. Captain, Minho reported, I'm reading massive Raknath forces converging on the main settlement. The Velnar defenses won't hold more than a few hours. Then we don't have a few hours, Hyun said. All hands battle stations. Taiyang, get your people ready. We're going in. The horizon's edge dropped out of orbit, descending toward a planet that was crying out for salvation. Inside the ship, 200 humans prepared for war. They checked their weapons one last time. They said quiet prayers or thought of home. They made themselves ready. The Velnar had called for help. The Deathworlders of Earth had answered. The dropships cut through Velnar's atmosphere like knives through water. Inside the lead craft, Commander Taiyang watched the storm outside the window. Lightning flashed across dark clouds and wind buffeted the ship from side to side. Quite a storm, remarked Sergeant Bora, checking her squad's equipment one last time. This, Pilot Minho's voice came through the speakers, amused. This is nothing. You should see monsoon season back home. The Velnar traffic controller's voice crackled over the radio, high-pitched with panic. Human vessels, you must abort landing. The electrical storm is too dangerous. Our own ships cannot fly in these conditions. Acknowledged control, Minho replied. We'll be fine. Just tell us where to land. The controller made a sound that might have been disbelief or terror. The ships descended through the storm without incident. What the Velnar considered a deadly atmospheric event, the humans barely noticed. Earth's weather was far worse. The dropships touched down near the Velnar command center. The rear ramps opened and the Marines filed out into the alien world. Taiyang was first down the ramp, his boots hitting the ground with a solid thump. The Velnar greeting party waited in full environmental suits, their delicate forms enclosed in protective gear. Their leader, Consul Pravesh, stepped forward carefully. He was tall and thin, with a shell-like covering that gleamed in the dim light. Commander Taiyang, Pravesh said through his suit's speaker, thank you for coming. We have prepared environmental suits for your people. The atmosphere here can be, he stopped. The humans were walking around in just their uniforms. Sergeant Bora had even removed her helmet, breathing the air directly. The atmosphere is fine, Taiyang said. A bit cold, but fine. Pravesh's suit sensors showed the outside temperature was 8 degrees Celsius. For the Velnar, this was comfortable. For most council species, it was dangerously cold. The humans were acting like it was a pleasant day. You're not wearing protective gear, Pravesh said weakly. Dr. Nari joined them, carrying her medical scanner. She had removed her helmet too. Our equipment showed the atmosphere is breathable. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace elements. It's actually very clean compared to Earth's air. But the bacteria, Pravesh said. The alien microorganisms. The exposure risk. We'll be fine, Nari assured him with a smile. Human immune systems are quite robust. Pravesh didn't understand. Breathing alien air without filtration was suicidal. Every species knew that. Apparently nobody had told the humans. They moved to the command center, a low building near the center of the settlement. Inside, Velnar commanders huddled around holographic displays showing the Raknath advance. The situation was grim. They're coming from 3 directions, explained General Tarvin, pointing at the map. Approximately 50,000 warriors, maybe more. Our defenses have slowed them, but we're running out of ammunition and our soldiers are exhausted. Taeyang studied the map carefully. How long until they reach the city? 12 hours, perhaps less. Good. That gives us time to prepare. Taeyang turned to his officers. Bora, I want defensive positions here, here, and here. He marked points on the map. Daewon, set up the heavy weapons on this ridge. Minho, keep the dropships ready for close air support. The Velnar watched as the humans planned their defense. They worked quickly, efficiently, with the confidence of people who had done this many times before. But there were so few of them. 200 soldiers against 50,000 Raknath. Commander, Pravesh said hesitantly, I must ask, do you truly believe you can hold against such numbers? Taeyang looked at him. We're not planning to hold, Consul. We're planning to win. The Velnar fell silent. Win? Against the Raknath swarm? It was madness. There's one thing we need, though, Taeyang continued. The atmospheric processors in the combat zone. Can you modify them? Modify them how? Earth standard environment. 1 Earth gravity if possible, 25 degrees Celsius, 70% humidity. General Tarvin's shell went pale. Commander, those conditions would be lethal to my soldiers. The heat alone, I know, Taeyang said. That's why your soldiers will stay here defending the city proper. My people will hold the forward positions. But your soldiers will be fighting in their optimal conditions, Tarvin protested. That's not fair to them, Bora laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. Sir, those aren't optimal conditions for us. That's just normal. Room temperature. The Velnar stared at her. Room temperature. 25 degrees was halfway to boiling water. The humidity would be like breathing liquid. And they wanted higher gravity? Dr. Nari pulled up Earth's environmental data on her pad. Perhaps I should explain. Earth's temperature ranges from -90 to +58 degrees Celsius depending on location and season. Gravity is 1.0 g, which I understand is about 1.7 times what you experience here. Our atmosphere is thicker and contains numerous pathogens that our immune systems fight constantly. Your world is a nightmare, whispered one of the Velnar officers. Our world is home. Nari replied gently. And yes, it made us tough. Pravesh was beginning to understand. The Council had classified Earth as a Class 12 death world. He had thought that was an exaggeration, a bureaucratic overreaction. Now he realized it was accurate. These creatures, these humans, came from a planet that would kill most species in hours. We'll modify the processors, he said quietly. May the ancestors help us all. Over the next several hours, the humans transformed the battlefield. They set up weapons emplacements, dug trenches, and established supply lines. The Velnar watched in fascination and horror as the humans worked in the modified atmosphere zones without any signs of discomfort. Sergeant, Bora's engineering teams installed equipment that looked impossibly heavy. When a Velnar worker tried to help lift a supply crate, he couldn't move it at all. Bora picked it up with one hand. Sorry, she said. Earth gravity. We're used to carrying heavier loads. As night fell, the Raknath scouts appeared on the horizon. They were large creatures, each the size of a big dog, with armored shells and multiple legs. They moved in perfect coordination like parts of a single organism. Taeyang watched them through binoculars. They're testing our defenses, seeing what we have. Should we fire? Asked Daewon. No, let them look. Save ammunition for the main assault. The scouts withdrew into the darkness. Across the battlefield, the human soldiers settled in for the night. Some slept, others kept watch. They ate rations that the Velnar found disturbing, preserved foods with intense spices and flavors that would overwhelm most species' digestive systems. In the command center, Pravesh watched the humans on his monitors. They were so calm. Didn't they understand the danger they were in? The Raknath had destroyed civilizations. They had swept through systems like wildfire. "They're either very brave or very foolish," General Tarvin said. "Maybe both," Pravesh replied. "Or maybe they know something we don't." Captain Hyun's face appeared on the communication screen. She was still aboard the Horizon's Edge in orbit above the planet. "Status report, Commander?" she asked. "Defenses are ready, Captain," Taiyang replied. "We're as prepared as we can be." "The Council has dispatched an observer," Hyun said. "A Pelthrin named Kirthal. She'll arrive in a few hours to witness whatever happens." "To witness our failure, you mean?" Taiyang said with a slight smile. "Perhaps. Or perhaps she'll see something the Council has never seen before." Hyun paused. "Be careful down there." "Always, Captain." As dawn approached, the sensors picked up movement. Massive movement. The Rachnath swarm was coming. A tide of chitinous bodies flowing across the landscape toward the Velnar capital. Taiyang stood at the forward position, watching the approaching horde. Behind him, his soldiers checked their weapons one last time. The modified atmosphere zone was active now, warm and humid. For the humans, it felt like a summer day. For the Rachnath, it would be something very different. "All units, this is Taiyang," he said calmly into his radio. "Enemy approaching. Hold your positions. Fire on my command." The Rachnath came closer. 10,000 meters. 5,000. 3,000. The ground shook with their movement. There were so many of them. A living carpet of death rolling toward the human lines. In the command center, Pravesh and his officers watched in horrified fascination. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't even moving. They just stood there waiting. "This is insane," Tarvin whispered. 2,000 meters. 1,000. The Rachnath released their first attack. Clouds of spores that shut down neural systems in most species. The humans didn't even flinch. 500 meters. Taiyang raised his hand. Fire. The human weapons opened fire all at once. The sound was deafening. Streams of bullets tore through the Rachnath front lines and explosions bloomed like flowers across the battlefield. The Rachnath warriors fell by the hundreds, their armored shells cracking under the sustained fire. But they kept coming. In the Velnar command center, Pravesh watched the battle unfold on his screens. He had seen many battles in his long life, but never anything like this. The humans fought with a ferocity he had never witnessed. Their weapons seemed designed not just to kill, but to obliterate. "What kind of weapons are those?" General Tarvin asked, his voice shaking. Dr. Nari, who was monitoring the battle from the medical bay, answered over the comm. "Standard Earth military rifles. Designed for hunting our planet's megafauna and defending against large predators." "Megafauna?" Pravesh repeated. "What kind of predators does your world have?" "Large ones," Nari said simply. "Our ancestors had to develop weapons that could stop creatures weighing several tons." The Rachnath pushed forward into the modified atmosphere zone. Immediately, their coordinated movement began to falter. The heat and humidity were disrupting their pheromone signals. Individual warriors started making mistakes, bumping into each other, breaking formation. Sergeant Bora noticed it first. "Sir, they're slowing down. The environmental change is affecting them." "Confirmed," Taiyang said. "All units maintain fire. Don't let them adapt." The battle raged for hours. The Rachnath kept coming in waves, trying to overwhelm the human positions through sheer numbers. But the humans held. When their rifles ran low on ammunition, they switched to other weapons. When those ran out, they used grenades. When the Rachnath got too close, they fought hand to hand. That was when Pravesh truly understood what the humans were. A group of Rachnath warriors broke through the line near Bora's position. They were massive creatures up close, their mandibles dripping with acid. They rushed toward the human soldiers, expecting them to break and run like every other species did. The humans didn't run. Bora drew her combat knife and met the first Rachnath head-on. She dodged its slashing claws, ducked under its snapping mandibles, and drove her blade into the weak point where its head met its body. The creature collapsed. She was already moving to the next one. Around her, her squad fought with the same brutal efficiency. These weren't just soldiers. They were predators in their own right. "Ancestors preserve us," Tarvin whispered. "They're fighting the Rachnath in close combat." "By choice." "Not by choice," Pravesh said, watching in awe. "By nature." In orbit, the Pelthrin observer Kirthal had arrived. Captain Hyun showed her the battle feeds. Kirthal's feathers stood on end as she watched. "This is impossible," she said. "The Rachnath spore weapons should have incapacitated them by now." Human respiratory systems evolved to filter Earth's pathogens, Hyun explained. Our world has billions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Our immune systems fight them every day. The Rachnath spores are actually less complex than what we deal with naturally. Kirthal's avian eyes widened. Your entire species has military-grade biological defenses? Just naturally. We had to, Hyun said. Earth doesn't give anyone a choice. Back on the ground, the tide of the battle was turning. The Rachnath were still numerous, but their coordination was completely broken now. They were fighting as individuals instead of as a swarm, and individuals could be defeated. Taeyang moved through the battlefield, directing his forces with calm precision. He had trained for this his entire adult life. War was in humanity's history, written in blood across thousands of years. Every tactic, every strategy, every lesson learned from countless battles, all of it was in his head now, ready to use. Daewon, concentrate fire on Sector 7, he ordered. Minho, I need air support on the eastern flank. Bora, pull your squad back 50 meters and regroup. The orders flowed smoothly, and the soldiers executed them perfectly. This was what humans did. This was what Earth had taught them. Dr. Nari watched from the medical station, ready to treat casualties. So far, there had been surprisingly few. Some cuts, some bruises, one broken arm. Nothing serious. The humans were winning. She pulled up her analysis of the Rachnath biology again. An idea was forming. Captain, she said over the comm to Hyun, I think I know how to end this faster. I'm listening, Doctor. The Rachnath are already struggling in the modified environment. What if we increase the temperature even more, say 35 degrees? There was a pause. Then Hyun said, that would be extremely uncomfortable for most species. For most species, yes. For humans, it would be a hot summer day. Hyun considered this. Commander Taeyang, did you hear that? Affirmative, Captain, Taeyang replied, not even breathing hard despite having been fighting for hours. Do it. The atmospheric processors adjusted. The temperature in the combat zone rose to 35 degrees Celsius. The humidity climbed to 80%. The Rachnath warriors started to collapse. Their biology simply couldn't handle it. They were evolved for cold, dry environments. This felt like being cooked alive. Their movements became sluggish, their attacks weak and uncoordinated. The humans switched to lighter gear and kept fighting. In the command center, Pravesh was beyond words. The humans had just made the battlefield even more hostile, and they were thriving in it. One of his officers had fainted from just watching the temperature readings. They're not like us, Tarvin said, stating the obvious. They're something else entirely. They're survivors, Pravesh replied. And right now I'm very grateful they're on our side. The Rachnath assault broke. The warriors that could still move retreated, dragging their fallen with them. The humans held their positions, weapons ready, but didn't pursue. They had achieved their objective. Taeyang surveyed the battlefield. Thousands of Rachnath bodies lay scattered across the ground. His own forces had 0 fatalities. 0. Against an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations, his people hadn't lost a single soldier. All units. Status report, he said calmly. The reports came back. A few injuries, nothing serious. Some equipment damage. Ammunition was at 60%. They could fight again if needed. Good work, everyone, Taeyang said. Get some rest. I have a feeling this isn't over. He was right. As the sun set on Velnar Prime, sensors detected more movement. The Rachnath Hive Queen had received word of the defeat. She was coming personally, and she was bringing her elite guard. Kirthal watched from orbit, her report to the council already half-written in her mind. She didn't know how to explain what she had witnessed. The council's understanding of warfare, of what was possible in combat, had just been completely rewritten by a species they had barely paid attention to. Captain Hyun stood beside her, watching the same displays. Observer Kirthal, you should know something. What you saw today, that's not humans at our best. That's just humans doing what we've always done. And what's that? Kirthal asked. Surviving, Hyun said. No matter the odds. On the ground, Sergeant Bora sat with her squad, cleaning weapons and checking gear. Someone had broken out ration bars and they were sharing them around. Think they'll try again? Asked one of the younger Marines. Probably, Bora said, biting into her ration bar. It was spicy. The kind of flavor that would overwhelm most alien species. She barely noticed. The Rachnath don't give up easy. Neither do we, another Marine said. Bora smiled. No, we don't. In the medical bay, Dr. Nari was treating the wounded. Most of them didn't want to leave the line, insisting they could keep fighting. She had to order them to rest. Stubborn, all of them. But that stubbornness had kept humanity alive through ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have wiped them out. Pravesh came to visit the medical bay, wanting to see the human wounded for himself. He found them joking with each other, comparing injuries like they were trading stories at a gathering. One soldier with a bandaged arm was doing exercises to make sure the limb still worked properly. Does it hurt? Pravesh asked. The soldier looked at him. Yeah, a bit. Nothing compared to the broken leg I got climbing in the mountains back home, though. That hurt Pravesh didn't understand. This creature had been injured in combat and was comparing it to a recreational activity. What kind of species injured themselves for fun? Your people are remarkable, he said finally. We're just people, the soldier replied with a shrug. We do what we have to do. Night fell completely. The humans settled into watch rotations, some sleeping while others kept guard. They had learned long ago that rest was a weapon, too. A tired soldier made mistakes, and mistakes got people killed. Taeyang stood at the forward observation post looking out into the darkness. Somewhere out there, the Rachnath were regrouping, planning their next move. The Hive Queen would not accept this defeat. She would come with everything she had. Good, let her come. He and his people would be ready. Behind him, the lights of the Velnar capital glowed softly. People lived there, families, children. A civilization that deserved to survive. That was why his people were here. Not for glory or conquest, but because someone had called for help. And when humans heard that call, they answered. The second wave came at dawn. The sensors detected them first. A massive force 3 times larger than the first attack. 150,000 Rachnath warriors surrounded the Velnar capital in a wide circle. And at the center of the swarm was something the scanners had trouble identifying at first. Something huge. That's the Hive Queen, Dr. Nari said, studying the readings. She's massive. 3 meters tall, heavily armored, and according to these biosigns, extremely intelligent. Commander Taeyang studied the tactical display. The Rachnath had learned from their first defeat. They were spreading out, attacking from multiple directions at once, trying to thin out the human defenses, and they had brought their elite warriors, Rachnath that had been genetically modified to handle higher temperatures and pressure. Captain, Taeyang said to Hyun over the comm, we're going to need everything we have for this one. You have it, Commander, Hyun replied from orbit. The Horizon's Edge is ready to provide orbital support if needed. Pravesh and the Velnar leadership watched the approaching force with growing horror. Commander, you must evacuate, the consul said. There are too many. Even you cannot stand against such numbers. We're not evacuating, Taeyang said calmly. We came here to protect your people. That's what we're going to do. But it's hopeless. Taeyang looked at the alien leader. Consul, humanity has faced hopeless situations before. We're still here. The Rachnath attack began with a new weapon, bioartillery, organic cannons that fired explosive projectiles at the human lines. The ground erupted in fountains of dirt and rock. The barrage was intense, designed to break the defenders before the main assault even began. The humans had dealt with artillery before. They took cover in their prepared positions, waited out the bombardment, and checked their equipment. When the explosion stopped, they were still there, still ready. Lieutenant Daewon had been studying the Rachnath communication methods during the night. He discovered that their swarm intelligence relied on specific sound frequencies to coordinate. Now he activated a new weapon, acoustic disruptors that broadcast noise on those exact frequencies. The effect was immediate. The Rachnath swarm's perfect coordination shattered. Warriors bumped into each other, confused. Some attacked their own kind by mistake. The swarm intelligence was blind and deaf, reduced to individual creatures acting on instinct. Excellent work, Daewon, Taeyang said. All units prepare for assault. They're coming in, the Rachnath charged. Even confused and disorganized, they were still dangerous. There were simply so many of them. The human weapons fired continuously, cutting down the attackers, but more kept coming. Pilot Minho launched his dropship, providing close air support. He flew patterns that would be suicidal for most pilots, low, fast, aggressive. The Velnar traffic controller screamed warnings at him, telling him he was going to crash. Minho just laughed and kept flying. Earth's atmosphere had taught him to handle far worse conditions. The Rachnath reached the human lines. Close combat began across the entire battlefield. This was where the humans showed their true nature. Every human alive was descended from persistence hunters, from predators that could track prey for days, from survivors who had clawed their way to the top of Earth's brutal food chain. Sergeant Bora's squad fought like a pack of wolves, coordinated and fierce. When a Rachnath warrior broke through their line, they surrounded it, attacking from multiple angles until it fell. Then they moved to the next threat. The battle raged for hours. The sun climbed higher in the sky, making the modified atmosphere zone even hotter. The elite Rachnath warriors could handle it better than their regular troops, but they were still struggling. They had been modified for heat, not for the combination of heat, humidity, gravity, and constant combat against an enemy that refused to break. Then the Hive Queen herself entered the battlefield. She was massive, larger than any Rachnath they had encountered. Her carapace was deep black, hardened by centuries of survival. She had led the Rachnath through dozens of conquests, destroyed countless civilizations. She radiated power and intelligence, and she was furious. The queen strode toward the human lines, her royal guard around her. These were the Rachnath's finest warriors, selected from millions, enhanced and trained specifically to protect their ruler. They moved with a precision that the regular swarm lacked. Taeyang saw her coming. He knew what this was, a challenge. The Rachnath had a tradition. When facing a worthy opponent, the queen herself would fight the enemy commander in single combat. It was both a matter of honor and a tactical move. If she won, the swarm would surge forward with renewed vigor. If she lost, the queen stopped 50 meters from the human line. Her voice was like grinding stones translated through a biological mechanism. "Human commander," she said, "I am Velcarax, queen of the swarm. You have fought well. You have earned the right to face me. Come, let us end this." Taeyang stepped forward, checking his weapons. Captain Hyun's voice came through his earpiece. "Commander, you don't have to do this. We can concentrate fire on her position." "No, Captain," Taeyang replied quietly. "If I refuse, the swarm will fight even harder. They need to see this," he paused. "Besides, I think I can take her." "Commander, trust me, Captain." Taeyang walked out to meet the queen. Behind him, his soldiers held their positions, weapons ready but not firing. The entire battlefield had gone quiet, both sides watching. Velcarax towered over him. Her blade limbs could cut through steel. Her armored shell had stopped weapons that would destroy vehicles. She had killed hundreds of enemies in personal combat over her long life. "You are small, human," she said. "Brave, but small." "Size isn't everything," Taeyang replied. The queen attacked. She was fast, incredibly fast for something so large. Her blade swept toward Taeyang in a pattern designed to give him no escape route. It was a killing move, proven against dozens of species. Taeyang moved, not away but sideways, then in. He was inside her reach before she could adjust. His knife found a gap in her armor, drawing dark blood. He rolled away before her counterattack could land. The queen roared in anger and pain. No one had wounded her in decades. They circled each other. Velcarax was stronger and better armored, with natural weapons that could kill with a single strike. But Taeyang was faster. He was also more experienced at fighting creatures larger than himself. Every human was. Earth's megafauna had taught them that lesson thoroughly. The duel continued. Taeyang dodged, blocked, and struck when he saw openings. He used his smaller size as an advantage, staying mobile, forcing the queen to move in the heat and humidity that was sapping her strength. Each wound he inflicted was small, but they added up. Velcarax began to slow. The environment was affecting her despite her enhancements. The heat, the thick air, the higher gravity, all of it was taking its toll. And this small creature kept cutting her, kept moving, kept refusing to die. She realized something then. This was what the humans were. Persistence hunters. They didn't win by being the strongest or fastest. They won by outlasting their prey, by never stopping, by refusing to give up until their opponent collapsed from exhaustion. The queen made a desperate lunge, throwing everything into one final attack. Taeyang saw it coming. He had been waiting for it. When you fought something bigger and stronger than yourself, you waited for the moment when they overcommitted. Then you struck. He dropped low, letting her blades pass over him. Then he surged upward, his knife driving into the weak point where her head joined her body. The blade was earth steel, strong enough to cut through materials that would blunt most weapons. Velcarix fell. The Hive Queen, conqueror of worlds, died on an alien planet at the hands of a small human who had simply refused to quit. The Royal Guard hesitated, confused. Their queen was dead. The swarm intelligence that had guided them for so long was gone. They had no instructions for this situation. The human soldiers opened fire. The Royal Guard fell in seconds. Across the entire battlefield, the Rachnath swarm collapsed. Without the Queen's guidance, they were just individual creatures frightened and lost. They fled in all directions, scattering into the wilderness. Taeyang stood over the Queen's body, breathing hard. His uniform was torn and bloody, though most of the blood wasn't his. Around him, his soldiers were cheering, celebrating the victory. But the celebration was cut short. Casualty reports came in. 15 humans dead, 40 wounded. They had won, but the cost had been real. These were people with families, with friends, with lives that had been cut short. Taeyang's face hardened. Victory always had a price. He had known that going in. Every soldier had. But knowing it didn't make it easier. Dr. Nari was already working in the medical bay, fighting to save the wounded. She moved with swift precision, using techniques developed over thousands of years of human medicine. Her hands were steady even as tears ran down her face. She was saving lives, but she was also losing some, and each loss hurt. Captain Hyun watched from orbit, feeling the weight of command. She had sent those people into battle. She had made the decision to help the Velnar. And now 15 families would receive news that their loved ones weren't coming home. But the Velnar civilization would survive. 40,000 Velnar civilians would live to see another day. That had to count for something. In the command center, Pravesh and his people watched and stunned. The news of the Battle of Velnar Prime spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, every council species knew what had happened. The humans, the newcomers from the Death World, had defeated the Rachnath swarm. They had done what entire fleets had failed to do. They had stopped the unstoppable. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. The chamber was full, every species represented, every seat occupied. They had all seen the recordings that Observer Kirthal had sent. They had watched humans fight in conditions that would kill most soldiers. They had seen Commander Taeyang defeat the Hive Queen in single combat. Now they had to decide what it meant. Ambassador Velthar stood to speak first. His wings were folded tight against his body, a sign of deep concern among his people. We must acknowledge what we have witnessed. The humans are a military force unlike any we have encountered. The question we face is simple. What do we do about it? The chamber erupted in debate. 3 clear positions emerged quickly. The first group, led by Counselor Kesh of the Torvan Confederacy, spoke with fear in their voices. "We should quarantine Earth," Kesh said, his crystalline body pulsing with agitated colors. "They are too dangerous. A species that evolved on such a hostile world, that finds warfare so natural. They could threaten us all." The second group disagreed. Ambassador Rilthar of the Morvax Trade Alliance had different concerns. "We should court them as allies," she said. "Imagine having such warriors protecting our trade routes, our colonies. We would be safer than we have ever been." The third group, smaller but thoughtful, was led by Consul Pravesh. "We should learn from them," he said. "Not fear them, not use them, but understand them. They came to help us because it was the right thing to do." That tells us more about their character than any battle footage. The debate went on for hours. In the end, they did what councils always do. They formed committees, scheduled more meetings, and took no immediate action. But everyone knew that the galaxy had changed. The humans were here and they were not going away. Back on Velnar Prime, the humans were preparing to leave. The Rachnath threat was broken. Small groups of the creatures still roamed the wilderness, but they were no longer organized, no longer dangerous. The Velnar could handle them now. Commander Taeyang stood in the memorial garden that Pravesh had created. 15 stone markers stood in a neat row, each carved with a human name and the Earth date of their death. The garden was kept at Earth temperature, warm enough that only humans could visit comfortably. Captain Hyun joined him. "The families have been notified," she said quietly. "They're proud. All of them. Pride doesn't bring them back," Taeyang said. "No, but they knew the risks. They chose to be here." Taeyang nodded. It was true. Every human in the peacekeeping force was a volunteer. They had signed up knowing they might not come home. That made it their choice, but it didn't make it easier. The Council wants to speak with us, Hyun continued. They're forming something called the Joint Defense Initiative. They want humans to lead it. Of course they do, Taeyang said with a bitter smile. Now they see us as useful. Maybe they're learning. Pravesh isn't afraid of us. Neither are the Velnar. They're grateful. As if summoned by his name, Pravesh approached. He moved slowly in the Earth temperature zone. His environmental suit working hard to keep him alive. He stopped respectfully a few meters away. I wanted to thank you again, he said, for everything. For fighting. For the sacrifice your people made. We did what anyone should do when someone calls for help, Hyun replied. But not everyone does, Pravesh said. The council debated for hours while my people died. You acted. That matters. He gestured to the memorial garden. We will maintain this place forever, so our children and their children will remember that when we needed help, the humans came. Not because they had to, not for profit or politics, because it was right. Taeyang felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Maybe the sacrifice had meaning after all. Dr. Nari was at the hospital, training Velnar medical staff in human techniques. They were fascinated by her knowledge, especially her understanding of trauma medicine. Earth's violent history had taught humans how to heal terrible injuries. Why do you know so much about fixing broken bodies? One of the Velnar doctors asked. Nari paused. Because for most of human history we had to. War accidents, natural disasters, Earth breaks us constantly. We learned to heal because we had no choice. Your world sounds terrible. Sometimes it is, Nari admitted, but it's also beautiful. And it made us strong enough to help others. She left them with medical texts and techniques, knowledge that would save Velnar lives for generations to come. It felt right, sharing what humanity had learned through hard experience. Lieutenant Daewon was working with Velnar engineers, teaching them about defensive systems. Sergeant Bora was consulting on fortification designs. Pilot Minho was showing their pilots new flying techniques. Each human was leaving something behind, a gift of knowledge earned through Earth's harsh lessons. 2 weeks after the battle, the Galactic Council made their announcement. The Joint Defense Initiative would be formed, a multinational force designed to respond to crises across Council space. Humans would serve as tactical advisors and rapid response specialists. Captain Hyun was promoted to admiral and given command of the initiative. She accepted with the understanding that human forces would only be used for defense, never for conquest or aggression. The council agreed, though Hyun suspected some of them were already thinking about how to bend that rule. Commander Taeyang became the field commander of the JDI's rapid response teams. His first act was to establish strict rules of engagement. Human soldiers would protect, not terrorize. They would be guardians, not conquerors. Observer Kirthal published her report. It became the most widely read document in council history. In it, she described what she had witnessed, but more importantly, she explained what it meant. The humans are dangerous, yes, she wrote. But they are dangerous in the way a guard animal is dangerous. Protective, loyal, fierce when defending their pack, but not randomly violent. They evolved on a world that taught them to survive at all costs. But they also evolved to work together, to protect their communities, to sacrifice for others. Earth made them hard, but it also made them compassionate. They know what it means to suffer, so they will not stand by while others suffer. The report changed minds across the galaxy. Fear began to shift to respect, and in some cases, to friendship. The Velnar became humanity's strongest allies. They sponsored human cultural centers on their worlds, taught their children about Earth, and welcomed human visitors warmly. The relationship was built on genuine gratitude and mutual respect. Other species began reaching out. The Pelthrin wanted to establish military exchange programs. The Marathi requested human help designing disaster response systems. Even the cautious Vexir asked for human advisors on defensive strategies. Earth's role in the galaxy was being defined not by conquest or domination, but by protection and cooperation. On the horizon's edge, Captain Hyun, now Admiral Hyun, stood on the bridge, looking at the mission reports flowing in. There were pirate attacks near the outer rim, rescue operations needed in the collapsed Nebula region, a colony facing food shortages in the Kepler expanse. So many calls for help, so many people who needed assistance. Where do we go first, Admiral? Her communications officer asked. Yun looked at the star map at the vast galaxy spread before her. Somewhere out there, people were in trouble, and now they knew who to call. "Set course for the outer rim," she said. "Let's deal with those pirates." The ship turned, engines burning bright as it jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind it, Earth continued to spin. That harsh blue world that had forged humanity in its crucible of ice and fire, storm and stone, and across the galaxy on 1,000 worlds. People looked up at the stars with a little less fear, because now they knew that if they ever needed help, the Deathworlders of Earth would answer, not as conquerors, not as tyrants, as protectors. Commander Taeyang sat in his quarters, writing letters to the families of the fallen. It was the hardest part of his job, but also the most important. Each person who had died deserved to have their sacrifice acknowledged, their memory honored. He thought about what he would say when he returned to Earth. People would call them heroes. There would be parades and medals and speeches. But he would remember the truth. They were just people who had done what needed to be done. Dr. Nari reviewed her medical records, updating the database with everything she had learned about alien biology. The knowledge would help future human doctors save alien lives. Every species had different vulnerabilities, different needs. Understanding them was the key to helping them. Sergeant Bora inspected the memorial garden one last time before departure. She touched each stone marker, whispering a quiet goodbye to fallen comrades. They had known the risks. They had gone anyway. That was what it meant to be human. Pilot Minho checked his flight logs, reviewing every mission. He had flown through storms and combat zones, pushing his ship to its limits, but he had brought his people home alive. Most of them. That mattered. As the horizon's edge prepared to depart Velnar space, Pravesh sent one final message to the humans. "Thank you for showing us that strength.